in a world where we have free will, where oftentimes we have a choice, why would any of us turn to punishment? Why do we choose to punish ourselves by staying in unhealthy relationships? Why does our legal system punish people for things that may not be their fault, like addiction? Why would we do any of these when life is seemingly hard enough? Well, it's because punishment provides relief. It provides a way for us to regulate our emotions in the storm of messy feelings that follow a mistake we made or an uncomfortable situation. Furthermore, in our society, we are taught punishment over rehabilitation through things like our justice system. So could it be that our world is slowly becoming addicted to punishment? To try and answer this question, we should look at things from a more scientific point of view. Self-punishment activates brain regions like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. These are linked to learning and social survival. From this, we can deduce that punishment was important in our evolution, and it still is, because it helps us maintain social bounds, regulate our guilt, and conform to group norms. In moderation, this behavior is very useful. It helped us survive, and to this day, it organizes our society. However, some people, especially those struggling with mental health, may take this behavior too far. Punishment becomes an extreme, a band-aid for our feelings of guilt and shame. It becomes a way to self-regulate. This very useful, good behavior turns into something bad, and we can start to lean into punishment to feel less powerless and gain a strange sense of authority over our emotions. In a situation where someone has done something to upset us, even if it wasn't intentional, we punish them harshly, cruelly, not necessarily because of what we are feeling, but because we want to regain control. Neuroscience shows that brain reward regions light up when we punish someone for doing something we deem as wrong. Therefore, it makes sense that bad punishment can be used for self-regulation and the regulation of others. But it all boils down to the same thing: control. In our society, we are taught that it is okay to take punishment to an extreme. Let's imagine a child who makes a small mistake, like spilling their milk or forgetting their homework. Their parents overreact. The child is met with anger, extreme disappointment, or silence, and only after is the situation resolved. The child has now learned that forgiveness comes from feeling and inflicting harsh negative emotions, not simply correcting their behavior. So the next time they or somebody else makes a mistake, they will replicate their parents' behavior, and the focus will be placed on suffering, not correction. That's how the cycle begins on a small scale. But it doesn't end there. It bleeds into big parts of our lives, like our justice system. Instead of seeing addiction as a medical condition or an emotional pain, many legal systems view it like a disgusting crime. The focus becomes punishing the people who commit this disgusting crime and not fixing the deep-rooted issues behind addiction. People caught with drugs are often imprisoned, stigmatized, cut off from society, rather than supported through treatment. The line between accountability and suffering becomes blurred. And what's tragic is that punishment rarely works. It doesn't address the reason why people turn to substances. It doesn't heal trauma. It just adds more pain to pain. So how can it be the solution? And why do we as a society accept it as such? Because we've been taught, culturally and institutionally, that suffering equals accountability. It becomes less about helping someone, more about making them feel worse so we can punish them into obedience. If we make them suffer, they will be held accountable. But what if addiction is about a desperate escape of feelings and not accountability or obedience at all? The reason why we focus on accountability is because accountability becomes a desperate way to regulate and navigate negative emotions that come from addiction. We fear, so we punish, and we don't solve. There is an issue towards our approach with mistakes, and we must think of how to focus on rehabilitation. Now that we know there is an issue, let's take a look at a country that's done everything to fix it. In Norway, the goal of the justice system is not retribution, it's reintegration. Prisons don't look like the cold, punitive facilities you might imagine. In fact, some look more like college campuses. Inmates have their own private rooms with big windows, bathrooms, and even private kitchens. They wear their own clothes, they're given education, work training, therapy, and most importantly, respect. One of the most famous prisons, Holden Prison, is often referred to as the most humane prison in the world. But Norway's philosophy runs deeper than aesthetics. It's based on a principle called restorative justice, which means that the system asks the very important questions. How can we prevent this from happening again? What caused this harm, and what does this person need to change about their lives? The results are extraordinary. Norway has one of the lowest recidivism rates, standing at around 20% in comparison to 70% in countries like the US. That means that most people who leave prison never come back. Why? Because Norway sees people, not offenders, but as citizens in crisis. It doesn't treat addiction like a personal attack, but as something that requires sympathy. It understands that behavior is often a symptom of things like poverty, trauma, and mental illness. So instead of punishing the pain, they work to heal it. When justice becomes about restoring dignity and understanding pain rather than removing it, the cycle of harm and shame starts to break. I urge you to implement the same attitude into your life. Find the balance between justice, accountability, and understanding. If you know you've made a mistake, give yourself grace and don't let shame weigh you down. If you can practice this attitude within yourself, you'll find it easier to treat others with empathy and respect. You will find the strength to put your unfair bias aside and help people through their mistakes. And if we are all able to do this, we will see a change with the way our society functions. Start with yourself and the rest will follow.